Our next judge is Dr. Ashwin Vaidya. He is President, Ratnagiri Ophthalmic Association, and practicing since last 23 years. I think Dr. Saili is also there. Sumit?
She's joining in a short while, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So should I start the next
Yes,
with
ma'am.
the
Yes,
first
ma'am.
presentation? Okay.
Yes.
So till the time we will start with our first presenter, Dr. Khushbu Somani. Dr. Khushbu, you will be speaking, I think, on retinal findings in post-COVID mucormycosis patients, right? You have 6 minutes and minutes for discussion, question answers. Yeah.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are audible.
Let's start.
Start. Yeah, please start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Khushbu, and I'll be presenting my topic on study of retinal findings in post-COVID mucormycosis patients. So, as we all know, the onset of COVID-19 wave has led to an avalanche of the rhino-orbital cerebral mucormycosis, otherwise a rare opportunistic infection. Due to the widespread use of steroids and higher antibiotics, it has led to the uncontrolled diabetes, which is proptosis, chemosis, diplopia, ophthalmopsia, and reduced vision. This disease being angioinvasive, it rapidly spreads to the orbital apex, then leading to the cavernous ophthalmic artery, then the central retinal artery involvement, leading to the permanent blindness. So my main objective was to study the retinal findings in post-COVID mucormycosis patients. Mucormycosis correlation between the diminution of vision and the retinal finding and the most common comorbidity in such patients. So we had done a retrospective observational analysis on these 180 patients with the mucormycosis managed by the Department of Ophthalmology. We had done a detailed ophthalmic and radiological examination on these 180 patients with mucormycosis. So we had done ocular examination by measuring the chart, measured the ocular movements everywhere, then proptosis by the rural scale method. Anterior segment evaluation was done thoroughly. Fundus examination was done by indirect ophthalmoscope. Serial photographs were taken every day to evaluate the course of the disease. Also, systemic examination was done by doing the blood investigations of RFTs, BSLs, electrolytes, etc. And diagnostic nasal endoscopy and KOH swab collection was done by the ENT specialist. Radiologically, MRI contrast, brain with PNS with orbit with 2 mm optic nerve cut was advised. For the treatment, according to the sinus involvement, FES or the endoscopic debridement or maxillectomy was operated along with the systemically IV amphotericin, that is liposomal or emulsion, along with the oral tablet posaconazole or isavuconazole was given. In indicated patients with ocular involvement, retrobulbar amphotericin injection with the repeat doses were given. Also, in some patients, exenteration was performed. So, according to the results, my study had 64 patients of the age group 41 to 50 years of age and maximum of male, that is 136. And according to the visual acuity, out of the 180 patients, 20 had no PL vision, 43 with finger counting 1 meter to 6 by 60, and 19 had more than 6 by 60 vision. So, out of the 180, 77 patients had orbital apex involvement, 21 had cavernous sinus thrombosis, 82 had other findings like sinusitis, erosion of wall, etc. And according to the retinal findings, out of 180, 19 had central retinal artery occlusion, 4 had central retinal vein occlusion, 2 had anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, 1 with secondary optic atrophy, and 120 had incidental diabetic or hypertensive retinopathy changes. So, with the correlation between the vision and the retinal finding, 20 patients had no PL vision. Among them, 17 patients had cavernous sinus involvement, 3 had orbital apex syndrome. Among the 17 patients, 16 had CRAO and 1 had optic atrophy. Among the 3 patients with orbital apex syndrome, 2 had AION and 1 had CRVO. And the correlation between the vision of the finger counting 1 meter to 6 by 60, 43 patients were included. And then they had orbital apex syndrome, that is 26 patients were involved, and cavernous sinus involvement were 4 patients. Among the 26 patients, 2 patients at CRVO, and among the 4 patients with cavernous sinus involvement, 3 patients at CRVO and 1 patient at CRVO. So, maximum patient of them had diabetes. Also, we had seen diabetes with hypertension. So the discussion goes immunity with a decrease in the T helper cell counts. Also, we have seen that some dimer levels and the correlation between the coagulopathy of the COVID-19 contributing to the development of ischemic changes, ultimately leading to the ocular decompensation. Also, mucor invades toxins it causes a loss of vision. Also, some studies have shown that mucor has affinity for in converting enzyme 2, which is mucor doubles the risk for the sight-threatening .
You muted yourself, Dr. Khushbu.
So mucormycosis presenting as a sequelae is angioinvasive. Hematological abnormalities with risk of thromboembolic phenomena known in COVID-19 eventually leads to ocular complication with loss of vision. Control of diabetes and steroid intake should be considered in high-risk patients. So any patient with the presenting symptom of the CRAO should be screened for mucormycosis. Thus, detection of rhino-ocular mucormycosis at an early stage with prompt debridement and systemic therapy can decrease the risk of the vascular occlusion and blindness and prevents the eyes and life salvage. Thank you. These were some of the references which I have taken. And these were some of the findings which were seen in the mucormycosis patient.
Screen is not visible, huh, Khushbu? Okay, Sanjay sir, Ashwin sir, questions. We have Dr. Saili Lahane also. She will be judging because Dr. Rajendra Kandulgaonkar sir, due to some reasons, are not there. So, welcome, Dr. Saili Lahane.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
We are happy to have you as our third judge.
Thank you.
Questions, please.
What had you advised, or what is your formulation to prevent or to screen faster? Because I am seeing that in your study, the maximum number of patients had CRAO.
Yes, sir.
So why was that? Why do you think CRAO was such more prevalent than the other conditions, vascular conditions, according to you?
So, mucormycosis and COVID-19, they both together have caused the coagulability, and the inflammatory cells also were involved, and thus also getting increased. So they were cell-mediated T helper cell were also degraded. So along with the coagulability and the mucormycosis causing the infarction and the occlusion, it causes the blood vessels to get it causes the loss of the ischemic. So it causes the ischemic changes of the blood arteries. Thus, it leads to the loss of vision. So CRAO and CRVO were the most common findings in my mucormycosis patient.
Very nice.
With regards to the retrobulbar injections,
Yes, sir.
yeah, did it make a difference with the outcome as far as the outcome goes?
Yes, sir. Pardon, sir, please.
Yeah, with regards to the electrobulbar injections of this drug, what was the difference in the outcome?
So
And-
yes, sir. As we have seen, many people, the limitation of the ocular movements. They had given repeated dose of the amphotericin. So also the in the movements of the patient, ocular movements of the patient. Also in some patients, vision also improved a bit. And also the patient, the extent of the, when we had done the repeat MRI, so the extent also got reduced.
And what was the frequency? How frequently did you give that? Frequency of the injections? Yeah.
Yes, sir. So we gave it on the alternate day, like we gave as it had less effect, less severity. So we gave liposomal, and alternately on alternate days.
Okay, so Dr. Khushbu, when did you notice that the patients are developing CRAO or CRVO? Like after how many days? Was it seen in the initial presentation of mucormycosis, or was it seen later in the course of mucormycosis? Was there any systemic correlation or any systemic finding which was associated with it? Whether any marker was associated in those patients who had CRAO or CRVO?
There were 2 to 3 patients which were giving, which had CRO during the course, but maximum patient came with the presentation of CRO, that is no PL vision. So when we saw on the dilated evaluation, we saw the retinal finding of CRO. And yes, ma'am, of the markers, there was elevated in such patients.
D-dimer was not elevated. Was D-dimer associated with these occlusions? The patients who had these occlusions had very high levels of D-dimer or anything like that. Was there any association, or did you?
Actually, they were a bit of a, in some patients there was a D-dimer raise, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Should we go on to the next speaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The next speaker
Thank you,
is
ma'am.
Dr. Nilay. Yeah, thank you, Khushbu. Dr. Nilay Dhore, a study of hyper homocystinemia and dyslipidemia as risk factor in retinal vein occlusion. Are you there, Dr. Nilay? Unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Khushbu, you can just stop your screen sharing.
I'm not able to share my screen right now.
Yeah, she has to stop.
Dr. Khushbu? Can someone from Nimratech just stop the screen sharing?
One second.
You had a busy day, I think, Dr. Sanjay. I was trying to get in touch with you, but you were in OT, I
Not
suppose.
issue, not issue. Actually, just a Saturday OT. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Good to see you again.
Again, yeah. Even I was looking forward to talk to you.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
Dr. Nilay, your presentation is visible. Please start. Unmute yourself.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you. Yeah.
So we presenting a study of hyperhomocystinemia and dyslipidemia as risk factors for retinal vein occlusions. So most common retinal vascular diseases, second to diabetic retinopathy, and they are a major cause of vision loss. It affects almost 16 billion people worldwide, and it can be divided into central retinal vein occlusions, branch retinal vein occlusions, semi-retinal vein occlusions. The exact pathological event that occurs in RVO is unclear, but it is believed to be eventually resulting from the intraluminal thrombus formation, and which is associated with changes in the blood constituents, blood flow, or vessel wall consistent with Virchow's triad. And they are due to various systemic and ocular problems, which lead to sudden painless vision loss due to macular edema initially. Coming to the Virchow's triad, here the components of the Virchow's triad are associated with a number of systemic disorders that carry a risk for the development of the retinal vein occlusions, which are mainly subdivided into hemostasis, hypercoagulability, and damage to the blood vessel walls. Hemostasis mainly is due to the myeloproliferative disorders, a sedentary lifestyle, pregnancy, oral contraceptives, or systemic vasculitides. Hypercoagulability is usually seen in protein C and S deficiencies, antithrombin 3, factor V Leiden, and hyperhomocystinemia, thrombophilia, and anticardiolipin antibodies. And the damage to the blood vessel wall is usually seen along with the arteriosclerosis, secondary to hypertension, diabetes mellitus, and hyperlipidemia. So in brief, the pathophysiology is as follows. A number of factors like neovascular compression, ocular factors, or systemic factors, inflammation, as well as AV crossing compressions, usually leading to increased turbulence and narrowed vessel lumens, which lead to venous thrombosis and which finally results in venous occlusions. So the aims, coming to aims and objectives. So the aim of my study was to study the role of hyperhomocystinemia and dyslipidemia in patients with retinal vein occlusion. The objectives of my studies were to evaluate the association of hyperhomocystinemia and dyslipidemia in retinal vein occlusion. The materials and methodology department of a tertiary care hospital in Western Maharashtra. The inclusion criteria was of the patients of both genders were included from an age group of 20 to 70 years, which were diagnosed with BRVO, CRVO, or HRVO. And the exclusion criteria for my study was any patients with diabetes mellitus, cataract, and any other media opacities. Detailed ocular examination, dilated fundus evaluation was done by biomicroscopy and an indirect ophthalmoscopy. So the patients diagnosed with retinal vein occlusions were subjected to tests such as total lipid profile and serum homocysteine levels. And dyslipidemia was defined as serum total cholesterol more than 200 milligrams per deciliters, triglyceride levels of more than 150 mg per dl, LDL levels of more than 100 milligrams per deciliters, and HDL levels of less than 40 milligrams per deciliters. Hyperhomocystinemia was classified as normal if it was less than 15 macromoles of per liter, mild to moderate if it was 15 to 30, intermediate if it was 30 to 100, and it was classified as severe if it was more than 100. Coming to observations and results. So 14 out of 70 patients had a deranged homocysteine level, and 10 out of 70 patients had dyslipidemia. So, and a total of 10 out of 70 patients had both the risk factors. As evidenced by the observation and statistical analysis, this gives us the p-value of 0.01 in case of hyperhomocystinemia and 0.01 to 0.04 in case of dyslipidemia. So coming to conclusion, based on our findings, there is a strong positive correlation between dyslipidemia, hyperhomocystinemia, and RVO. Eye care providers thus can potentially play a role in early detection of dyslipidemia, hyperhomocystinemia, and ultimately help for RVO, ensuring comprehensive health care to the patients. And further studies are needed to confirm this correlation. Limitations of my study were the sample size of 70 is small, and a larger population-based studies are needed. All participants in this study are from the same geographical area, limiting its broader applicability. And other systemic risk factors were not taken into considerations. These are my references. Thank you.
Yes. Questions? Sanjay sir, Ashwin sir.
This is a very nice study. What I would like to know is, because now we have excluded all the other diseases, normally we are having patients with CRVO with underlying diabetes or some other hypertension also. I'm wondering how you got so many patients who had only this one single problem, and that patient didn't have diabetes or hypertension. Because in our clinical OPD, we find that there is always some diabetes or hypertension or ISD as an underlying cause to these retinal vascular disorders. And maybe it is precipitated by your hyperhomocystinemia.
Yes,
According to
sir.
you, yeah.
Yes, sir. The patients which were taken were usually were not having any other systemic problems, and that's why hyperhomocystinemia was done to rule out if the patient had high raised levels of
That's
hyperhomocysteine.
how you chose your patients in the first place. So according to you, which
Yes,
is the
sir.
more problematic, this hyper homocystinemia or dyslipidemia? Which is the more causative problem, or which is the one which is causing the more maximum number of cases?
So dyslipidemia caused
Dyslipidemia.
yes.
Okay, Dr. Neele, out of your 70 patients, you said 10 patients had, 14 patients had hyperhomocystinemia, 10 patients had dyslipidemia, and 10 had both, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So out of 70 patients, 24 patients had something of this, and the patients which you included did not have any other systemic disease. So what is
No,
is,
ma'am.
is it correct what I have understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So remaining 46 patients, what do you think is the cause of CRVO or BRVO or retinal vein occlusion? Like, did you do any further investigations for them? Because if they were not hypertensive, not diabetic, homocysteine and dyslipidemia also was not there, then more than 50% of the patient, what was the cause out of your 70 patients?
Uh, they still had a deranged lipid levels, but it was not as significant as the patients which I had taken.
No, you have taken 70 patients, right? For your study.
But first to correlate between the hyperhomocystinemia and the dyslipidemia. The patients with hyperhomocystinemia and dyslipidemia were considered as the control group for that.
Which was considered as the control group?
The patients which had raised hyperhomocystinemia, significant raised hyperhomocystinemia, and significantly raised significant dyslipidemia
Were considered as?
were taken as positive in my study.
And remaining patients?
Remaining patients had they didn't show significant amounts of dyslipidemia or hyperhomocystinemia.
But they had CRVO or BRVO or hemicyst. So, and they also didn't have hypertension or diabetes.
So what was the cause?
No, ma'am.
So what was the cause? That is what I am trying to find out, because out of 70 patients, 24 patients you had some positive findings, but remaining 46 patients did not have hypertension, did not have the blood pressure, and they also did not have hyperhomocystinemia and dyslipidemia, which are one of the most commonest causes which we can think about when we are seeing a patient of CRVO or BRVO. So if they did not have all this and the number is larger, the number of the patients who are not having any of this is larger. So that is why I was just thinking, what could be the cause for these many patients to develop CRVO or BRVO? Because the most common cause which I notice in my OPD is hypertension or diabetes, and the other causes being dyslipidemia or hyperhomocystinemia. So you have taken 70 patients, out
Yes.
of only 24 came positive for these two. And even for diabetes, hypertension, you have ruled out that. You have not taken patients with diabetes, hypertension. So maybe these patients during investigation would have had raised sugars or any other investigation which was abnormal, which is causative of vascular occlusions. Was
Yes, ma'am.
this
I had,
noticed by you?
no, ma'am, I had not done that part.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nilay.
Thank you, ma'am.
You can just stop your screen share.
I would like to take a special permission from the judges here. I'm really sorry to pop up in between. Actually, there is some glitch happened from the residents while submitting the paper. Dr. Neha Chaudhary and Dr. Akriti Sharma, who submitted the paper by the name of their HOD, Shashi Prabha Prasad Madam, and that's what caused the all issue here. And though their papers have been accepted, the presenting author is their HOD's name and the chief author is their resident's name, which should be reversed. So if the judges permit, Dr. Akriti Sharma can present a ROP study and Dr. Is it okay? Judges, Tekwade sir?
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's for this paper on ROP, and which is the second paper you said?
That is COVID mucormycosis, sir.
Okay. But
Okay.
I mean, it's only the author and the presenter. That's the only thing. Yeah.
Basically, while submitting, they made a
Correct.
mistake and
Not the issue.
in another way.
Not the
Vaidya
issue.
sir, is it okay, Halim ma'am? Okay, fine. Darshan ma'am can go ahead. I hope Dr. Akriti is here.
Yeah. So next presenter is Dr. Akriti Sharma. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
You can go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I request judges to take note of the change.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Dr. Akriti Sharma.
Akriti.
Yes,
Sharma.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
You're on. Start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'll be presenting a paper on the analysis of the awareness of retinopathy of prematurity amongst parents of babies admitted in NICU in Western Maharashtra. Now, first, a brief overview of what is retinopathy of prematurity. Retinopathy of prematurity is a retinal vascular developmental disorder characterized by development of abnormal vessels of the retina in premature infants. It mainly affects premature babies born at or before 34 weeks and weighing 2000 gram or less at birth. Several risk factors have been found to be associated with the development of ROP. The most identified are low gestational age, poor postnatal growth, oxygen supplementation, low birth weight, respiratory distress, and blood transfusion. Now, with the rapidly improving survival of very low birth weight infants due to availability of more and better NICU facilities, India is facing an epidemic of ROP cases. And the incidence reported is between 22 to 52%. And an examination should be performed by an ophthalmologist skilled in the identification of ROP, including location and staging as described in the International Classification of Retinopathy of Prematurity. So normally, the first examination should be performed between 4 and 6 weeks of chronological age or within the 31st to 33rd week of post-conceptional or post-menstrual age, whichever is later, as determined by the infant's attending pediatrician or neonatologist. So the aim of my study is to analyze the awareness of ROP amongst the parents. Now the objectives of my study are to analyze the adequacy of existing ROP screening strategies, and number 2, to analyze the awareness about ROP in parents of babies admitted in NICU. Now, this shows the classification of retinopathy of prematurity, where stage 1 is the demarcation line, which separates the avascular from the vascularized retina. Stage 2 is the ridge arising in the region of demarcation line. Stage 3 is the extraretinal fibrovascular proliferation or neovascularization. Stage 4 is the partial retinal detachment, and stage 5 is the total retinal detachment. And we have to also rule out pre-plus disease and plus disease. Pre-plus disease is mostly more vascular tortuosity than normal, but insufficient for diagnosis of plus disease. And in plus disease, we see vascular dilatation and tortuosity of at least 2 quadrants of the eye. ROP screening being done. And the materials and the methods, basically we raise a questionnaires consisting of 5 questions. This questionnaire is asked from the parents of the patients admitted in NICUs. And first we also take down certain details of the patients, which includes the name and the gender of the patient, the NICU where the patient is admitted, the gestational age in weeks, the post-menstrual age in weeks, the birth weight in grams, the oxygen supplementation, whether it was given or not, and for how much duration, the duration of the NICU admission, and other comorbidities, if any. So the first question which was asked to the parents was if they know if their baby should undergo an eye examination. The second question asked was if they know about the disease called retinopathy of prematurity. The third question which was asked to them was if they know why preterm babies should undergo a dilated retina evaluation by an eye doctor or a retina specialist. The fourth question asked was if the pediatrician or neonatologist advised an eye examination of our baby, if it was advised to them by their pediatrician. Number 5 was if was ROP screening done for their baby. So depending on that, scoring was done for all the patients. And as per the WinPepi software, there were 96 parents of newborns were considered in the study, and the questions were asked, which was conducted between 1st May 2021 to 30th October 2021. And now the initial screening should ideally be done at a gestational age of 26 weeks. And and the treatment of ROP is based on the zones involved. Zone 1 is any stage of ROP with plus disease. Zone 2 is stage 2 or 3 of ROP with plus disease. Now, as per the results and observations, we saw that out of 96 babies, there were first 50 were females and 46 were males. And out of which basically 97% of the patients received screening during hospital stay, which was guided by the pediatricians. And approximately 3% patients were not guided for a screening. But on the other hand, only 5% of the patients, as per this pie chart, were aware of the prevalence of retinopathy of prematurity, whereas the rest of the patients were basically referred from the neonatologist, and that's how they reached us. And also in this pie chart, we can see that most of the patients were delivered via C-section and lesser patients by normal vaginal delivery.
1 minute more.
And the questionnaire, as per the questionnaire, mostly our questionnaire score was 2 on 5 for most of the patients, and lesser for score 1 on 5 for in the descending order, 2 on 5 followed by 1 on 5, then 3 on 5 and 4 on 5 only by 1 patient could be answered. So 28 patients had a score of 1 by 5, 62 had a score of 2 by 5. So basically, as per the study, we can see that there is very less awareness regarding a retinopathy of prematurity amongst the parents. So the importance of the study is to educate parents regarding ROP, to diagnose ROP at an initial stage and treat it early to prevent future blindness, and to identify babies who need urgent treatment. The limitations of the study is that there's a small sample size, it's a limited questionnaire, and study was done over a small period of time. My references are these. Thank you.
Question answers.
Yes, Dr. Akriti,
Yes, sir.
we find in our OPD that the patients are invariably referred by the neonatologist.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The parents, for some reason or the other,
Yes, sir.
they come quite late to the OPD. So,
Yes, sir.
did you find something like that, that the neonatologists are referring the patients on time,
Yes, sir.
but there is some gap in which the importance is not being delivered to the parents, and so they end up coming late to the OPD, and that's why maybe
Yes, sir.
the diagnosis is getting late.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We actually, I found certain patients in my study, sir, that the patients reached with the stage 4 of ROP. So they required ROP lasers, sir. This was true, sir. But most of the patients were, when they were referred by a neonatologist or pediatrician, were able to make it on time, sir.
Yeah. So if the patient is admitted and referred immediately inside the tertiary hospital, then the reference must be done immediately.
Yes, sir.
But,
Yes, sir.
if the patient is not in a tertiary hospital, it's somewhere in a rural area, and from there, if that patient has been referred, this is what we find.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. True, sir. So that is the reason, sir, with this study, we want to educate the parents more, sir, because not only asking a questionnaire, but also educating regarding that. And sir, I would also like to stress on the importance of pamphlets and posters in the rural areas so that more and more parents are educated regarding the same, sir.
Correct.
Yeah, as Dr. Vaidya rightly said, it's only when the child is delivered in a center or in a major hospitals, there where a pediatrician or a neonatologist is involved. That is the only place where these patients are told. Otherwise, I think they would be just go unaware. So
Yes, sir.
for this, what exactly, I mean, how do you apply your study? Where there is, say, no access or there's not much of communication between the pediatrician and ophthalmologist.
Yes,
What
sir.
was, how do you increase the awareness?
Sir, I tried visiting the NICU also, sir, trying to like we shortlisted patients who were on oxygen supplementation, low birth weight, and early deliveries, like preterm deliveries. So I tried talking to the parents. Also, sir, the parents who came to the OPD for ROP screening, I educated them and also promoted education to the rest of the family members regarding the same. And also, sir, I intend to, I feel that we should, like I said, be stressing more on pamphlets or newspaper advertisements or like educational camps from our side, sir, in rural areas to promote the same, sir.
Yeah, that's good, because like the way a patient always, the parents always carry the chart of the immunization of the patient.
Yes, sir.
I think they should be given a chart by the pediatrician or the gynecologist.
Yes,
they
sir.
lifelong carry the chart of the immunization.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
somewhere like that there should be, so that they know that this has to be checked repeatedly, and
Yes,
there has to be a follow up. Most problem I think is follow up. They
Yes,
feel it's
sir.
a one time thing and they're lost.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Even the patients, sir, which came to the OPD and we were like, they had immature retinas and had to be followed up. So we tried to, sir, counsel the patients properly so that they don't lose out on follow up, sir.
Follow up is, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, did you go to the NICUs to give this questionnaire, or you have given the questionnaire to the patients who are coming to Ophthalm OPD for evaluation?
No, ma'am. I went to the ma'am. I did both the things. I gave the questionnaires also in the NICU and also the patients visiting me in the OPD, ma'am, from other centers, ma'am, when they were coming for ROP references, ma'am, fundus. So I distributed it to them also and also to the NICU, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the judges? Should we go to the next presenter?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr.
Thank you.
Anand. Okay, you can stop your screen sharing,
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am. Thank you
Akriti.
so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Next presenter is Dr. Anant Bhosle. Is he here? Role of novel retinal mapping for vitrectomy subretinal atiplase injection in submacular hemorrhage. Is Dr. Anand?
Darshana, I don't see his name in this.
Okay.
unless somebody else is presenting on his behalf.
Even you don't have the name in this, Dr. Ashwin, Dr. Anand Bhosle.
No, I can't see his name anywhere.
Okay, then the next Tanmay Vaidya. Let me check once. Just. Okay. I have this list. There are 5 presenters in this session. Next is Sumit. Sumit is not there. Dr. Saili, can you just see the list which Sumit has given?
So in my list also there are 5 presenters. Out of Dr. Anand Bhosle is not there, and Dr. Tanmay Vaidya also I cannot see his name.
Even I cannot see.
So I will just.
Sanjay sir?
No. These 2 people are not seen in the list.
Okay, and your list has next presenter. Which name is there in your list?
The name is actually Anand Bhosle. In the list, what we have, that is Anand Bhosle, but he is not present here.
Yeah, even so the same list is with us. Okay. I will just check out with Sumit then. Once.
I think Dr. Neha Chaudhary is going to present in this session.
Her name is not there on our list, so should we add her name? What is the instructions?
Her name is not there, but she is present, and I just got an information that she'll be presenting in this session, but the name is not there in the list.
Okay, no problem. Okay, then we just request Neha to go ahead with her presentation, as both of them are not present. Dr. Anand Bhosle is also not there, and Tanmay Vaidya is also not there. So we'll go ahead with Neha's presentation and then finish off the session. Dr. Neha, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
You will be presenting on which topic?
Just
Darshana madam.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Siddharth here.
Yes.
Actually, we are running little late. So
Yeah, I know. We are going to wind up this session. But Dr. Neha had requested, I think, Sumit knows. So if there is some presentation on her end, then we'll just finish it off and wind up the session.
ma'am, I'm trying to share the screen. There's some problem. Just give me a second.
Your earlier talk was on retinal mucormycosis, no? Kindly tell your topic to the judges so that they can take note of it. Because our list doesn't show any topic on your name. Case of COVID, it's written in the message box.
Ma'am, my topic is efficacy of intraorbital amphotericin B injection in cases of rhinoorbital mucormycosis.
Okay. Are you able to present your screen?
No, ma'am, I'm not able to share the screen.
So till the time you are taking help of the technical person, I will. Should I hand over the session to Dr. Siddharth for?
Dr. Neva, it's okay if you present it without sharing the slides.
Okay.
Mucormycosis. Can I start?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. The title of my paper is Efficacy of Intraorbital Amphotericin B Injection in Cases of Rhinoorbital Mucormycosis.
Can you make your
Mucormycosis is
Dr. Neha? Can the video be on, please?
She's not
yes,
sharing the
ma'am.
slides. I think. You have to start your.
He's not able to share the screen, but
Share
I
the
can start the
slides.
video.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you can quickly go through your talk.
Ma'am, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. Mucormycosis is an aggressive opportunistic fungal infection, also known as phycomycosis and zygomycosis. It is an angioinvasive fungus. The ethmoid sinus is an important route of infection. Involvement of superior orbital fissure and its contents, such as cranial nerve 3rd, 4th, 6th, and branches of cranial number 5th, can result in ptosis, ophthalmoplegia, sensory loss to the cornea, and corresponding areas of the face. It can extend posteriorly into the cavernous sinus or the brain parenchyma. Direct histological examination of deep nasal scrapings or biopsies of the involved tissue or paranasal sinus secretions are diagnostic. The most widely accepted therapies include parenteral antifungal therapy, aggressive surgical debridement of paranasal sinus with orbital debridement, and in extreme cases, exentration of the orbit. Retroorbital antifungal treatment was selected as a non-surgical option to potentially halt the orbital progression. Materials and method: histopathological and radiological COVID positive or post-COVID confirmed cases of orbital mucormycosis from 1st May to 30th June were analyzed. Evaluation at presentation was detailed history of the patients, and ophthalmic examination and MRI brain plus orbit contrast was done. Clinical examination included visual acuity, color vision by Ishihara chart, pupillary reaction, extraocular muscle movement, and fundus examination was done. 50 mg per 10 ml of conventional amphotericin B was diluted with 10 ml sterile water, which gave 1 ml 55 mg per ml of injection amphotericin B. It was injected using a 26 1.5 gauge needle into the orbit under aseptic precautions. The whole procedure was done under local anesthesia. The route of administration, such as peribulbar, retrobulbar, subtenon, was given depending on the orbital content involvement seen in the MRI brain and orbit. The exclusion criteria were cavernous sinus involvement and intracranial involvement and advanced orbital disease, including apex. Daily monitoring of visual acuity and extraocular muscles movement were done, and pupillary reaction was also monitored. In our result, 35 patients had orbital involvement, out of which 39 patients had no intracranial extension. 27 were given intraorbital amphotericin B injection, out of which 17 were male and 10 were females. All patients received minimum 1 to 5, maximum 5 doses of injections. The most common presenting feature was chemosis. Around 27 patients had chemosis, and around 21 patients presented with periorbital edema, and around 18 patients presented with EOM restrictions, and around 10 patients were presented with proptosis, and 8 patients presented with diminution of vision. Treatment result of intraorbital injection amphotericin B. 79 in our study, 79% of the patients, that was 21 patients out of 27 patients, showed improvement. One patient did not show any improvement, and five patients had progressed, which required orbital exentration. Chemosis was seen in 27 patients, out of which 21 patients showed improvement. Periorbital edema, 21 patients showed, out of which 21 patients had resolved periorbital edema. Even restrictions, only 50% of the patients improved. In cases of proptosis, only 4 patients showed improvement, and vision improvement was seen only in 33% of the patients. 21 patients had improved radiologically, and out of that 21 patients, 10 patients also showed clinical improvement. 6 patients underwent exentration. Discussion: the standard therapy of rhinoorbital mucormycosis has been intravenous amphotericin B, extensive sinus debridement, and orbital exentration to prevent intracranial extension of this infection. The importance of intraorbital amphotericin B is that it prevents the systemic toxicity that is caused due to the systemic amphotericin B, which causes nephrotoxic and electrolyte imbalance. And as systemic injection amphotericin B is also angioinvasive, it addresses the problem of poor penetration as well. Direct infiltration of the drug into the orbit helps in the higher level of drug reaching the affected areas. Stewart et al. Reported in his study 85% patients improved post intraorbital injection of amphotericin B. In our study, 79 patients showed improvement post intraorbital injection amphotericin B. Case reports of retrobulbar antifungal injection in the treatment of orbital fungal infections have been reported, showed the successful use of retrobulbar amphotericin B. In this intervention may be a viable therapeutic option in cases of orbital mucormycosis where aggressive orbital debridement is not favored or the burden of orbital disease is not substantial. Thank you.
Yeah,
Questions
thank you.
to the judges?
Yeah,
I was not able to share the screen.
Okay, that's okay. Dr. Neha, you just said that 25 patients showed improvement radiologically. So, what was the radiological this thing? You had CT, MRI, what was it?
Yes, sir. In our study, we had basically we were doing every 2 weeks. The patients were here for around 60 days. So every 2 weeks, their MRI brain plus orbit contrast was done. So in those radiological improvement included decrease in the soft tissue enhancement, sir. Mostly that was seen, and decrease in the involvement of muscle involvement. That was the most common feature seen.
Okay, so it was all the cases you had done MRIs.
Yes, sir. In all cases, every 2 weeks, that was the hospital's protocol that the MRI was to be done.
Every 2 weeks. Okay.
Yes.
Did you have any local side effect or local reactions to the injections that you were giving?
Yes, sir.
Maybe or
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Around 8 patients, sir, had developed a lot of chemosis, and that subsided within 1 week. So we stopped the treatment for that week. We didn't give the next dose of intraorbital amphotericin B injection till it stopped. And then when the patient had the chemosis had resolved, then we continued with the intraorbital doses. And one patient actually, sir, also had a drop of vision after the injection.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Darshana madam.
Okay, so this was the last presentation and no more questions from my side. I think Madam, I think
I just want to ask the other judges, how do we mark her for the quality of her slide? I think she's not able to show the slide.
I think we will mark her out of 80 if I don't know if it's possible because
But that is the issue from her side, or what is it? It's a
She was not able to
share.
share
Okay.
the total. We had 4 participants in this session.
Yeah.
For 3, and then Neha Chaudhary was one more extra presenter.
Total we had 5 actually, ma'am. Out of which
2 were
2
absent.
did not. Yeah, 2 did not present, and Neha Chaudhary I think was the additional. Okay. Yeah. So we'll have to, as Dr. Saili said, it has to be because this quality of slides will be, we'll have to just skip that. So it will be out of 80. Yeah. Okay. But then how do we include her name now in our list? Because it's not there in our list.
Dr. Sumit had requested to add her names.
Okay. So we'll have to add from our side. We'll have to add that name. And the other 2 we just mark absent. What is it?
Yes.
Okay. So like that we total 6. 2 are absent and 4 were there. Okay.
Right, sir.
Good enough. Yeah. Good enough.
Should we close the session now?
yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And whom do we send this mark list to?
Sumit Lahani.
Sumit. Yeah. Sumit.
Okay.
As soon as you finish, you can just immediately send the mark list to Sumit on his personal WhatsApp. And thank you so much, Dr. Sanjay Tekawati sir, Dr. Vaidya sir, and Dr. Saili for being there as judges for this session. Dr. Siddharth, over to you.
Yes, madam.
Yeah.
Yes, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Darshana. And it was a real pleasure, and you really conducted it very well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure, sir. Ashwin sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Darshana ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Vaidya sir. Thank you, Saili.
Thank you. Bye-bye.